Meeting for Wednesday, June 11th, 2025 to order. And just for those that are in the audience, I know it's not common knowledge yet, but council voted over a month and a half or maybe even 2 months ago that there is no more question period. So I know people thought there was, but myself and Councillor Eastmere are more than willing to stay after the meeting if you have questions for us. So just do that. And again, in common courtesy that, no yelling or anything from the gallery. If you've got concerns, like I said, more than willing to wait till after the meeting. And please come up and see myself or Councillor Eastmere. Thank you. And so now I'm going to call the meeting to order. Introduction of late items.
Madam Chair, there are no late items from the staff.
Thank you. Adoption of the agenda. If I can have a mover to adopt. Moved by Ruth, seconded by Doug. Thank you. All in favor? Motion carries. Move for the adoption of the minutes unless there's any errors or omissions that anybody sees. Seeing none, can I have a mover for the adoption? Moved by Kim, seconded by Hillary. All in favor? No council communications other than what I said. There is no more question period, but because it's relatively new, myself and Councillor Eastmere will stay behind to answer any questions people may have. Presentations, we have none. Reports, we're going to have a pedestrian infrastructure upgrade priorities, which is going to be introduced by Jamie Rose, our Manager of Transportation. Wherever you want to go.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. So this has kind of become a bit of a little traveling roadshow for us. So we've presented to the accessibility community a couple of weeks ago, and we're here to present to you folks. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is, but in 2018, there was a decision to identify a program termed the Pedestrian Unallocated. And so that was about $300,000 that council identified to invest in pedestrian improvements on an annual basis. And that program's run since. There were a couple of years sort of around the COVID time when council did increase the investment to $1 million a year. And so it's actually proven to be an incredibly beneficial program, and we've made huge strides in improving our pedestrian mobility across the city. Today I'm here to talk about the 3 projects we're going to be bringing forward this year. The budget this year is $300,000, so we're back to our status quo level. And so those are spread across the city. We've got Applecross at Portsmouth, we've got Wallace at Franklin, we've got Townside at St. Patrick. And so in the report package, there's a bit of an outline as to sort of what each of those locations is about and why we believe that those are the preferred options for this year. Just a side note, we in 2023, we went through and updated our prioritization process. And that was, we went from a very technical, robust but complicated to explain mechanism and kind of distilled out all of the important pieces of it, but then created a tool that we can actually use our GIS system to rank and prioritize any crosswalks across the city. So that's what we're now using to go through and vet locations. It has fairly traditional elements like speed, safety, as in collision history, crossing distance. It's also got pedestrian driver elements, so proximity to transit, schools, things like that. It also has something that's a little bit unique in our world, that is socioeconomic factors. So we've actually included elements of household income within the area to elevate points in areas that have a lower income. Because we know that that's an area where people are more in need of having support for walking infrastructure as opposed to having the option to actually drive their car. Just jumping back to the location, so this is a street view shot of Townsite at St. Patrick. As you can see, it's a fairly wide crossing. It's a low, medium density neighborhood, but there's the school quarterways just down the road. And there's Mansfield Park just to the east and the hospital area to the north. And so this will be, we are proposing to do a raised crosswalk here, I believe. And So that should also address some of the concerns that we hear in the neighborhood about speed along Townsite Road. This is our second location, so this is actually just down the corner here. And so we do realize we are duplicating the crosswalks here. However, because we are in our primary urban center and have a high expectation of pedestrian mobility, we didn't really see that as a detriment of any sort. But again, we're going to be using a raised crosswalk to moderate speed as well as provide pedestrians with a better visibility crossing point to cross from sort of the old city and City Hall area down to the downtown, either via Bastion or through Commercial Street. Again, different perspective. The last location is up in the north, and so this is on Applecross Road at Portsmouth. Either a year or two ago, we made some improvements to the intersection at Applecross and Calinda. And so this is, again, another one where we've heard concerns about speed, so we're going to be using a raised crosswalk here as I say, to moderate speed and to increase visibility for the pedestrians. Up the road from here, speed was less of a concern. It was more of a sort of wide crossing and number of conflict points. So we made that one a two-stage crossing. But in presenting this location to the accessibility community, we were made aware of some other pedestrian drivers in the neighborhood that we weren't aware of. So this is actually an extra bonus. And so we're really excited to be bringing these forward. Minor edit to the report. I believe at the time of printing, we were expecting to be taking this to the council meeting on Monday night. It has actually been deferred to the Finance and Audit Committee for the same week. And so that'll be the point at which council hears these for official consideration. And again, another perspective shot for that one. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions or.
Doug?
You talk about raised crosswalks and $100,000, and when you drive around town, you see variations. You see a raised crosswalk with a pedestrian island and lights. You'll see a raised crosswalk with lights, and sometimes you just see a raised crosswalk on Lost Lake Road with signs. What's the price difference?
So these ones, I do believe, are both raised with lights. One of the biggest factors when we're looking at using a raised crosswalk is whether or not we need to make changes to the drainage infrastructure. So in having a elevated flat surface for pedestrians to cross on, we end up creating a dam feature on the road for drainage. And so if we're lucky, we can use existing catch basins, and it doesn't take, it's more of like an adjustment than it is a create new. In some locations, it's something more substantial. And so these cost estimates do have a component of contingency for unforeseen conditions. So it's always better to undercharge and over-deliver. But so whereas something like the one you'd see on Lost Lake Road would be significantly less, I would guess probably about a third of that cost.
How much of it costs?
Roughly a third of that, I would say, would be a safe number to.
Okay. And I appreciate the way it was all set out, but, and I have no problem with the town site one, because that is a speed problem and there's been fatalities there. But I don't quite understand the Franklin Street one, because there are lights at either end and there's nothing to cross to at Franklin Street. You're just crossing to a sidewalk and walking down. I would give more priority, for example, to the 2nd Street and Camp Place where Fairview Community School is. And there's a problem with people coming off the Parkway, coming down and coming into town at speed. And there's also no school at Franklin. And so if I had my druthers, so to speak, I would move that one up, and I would move up Hammond Bay at Kenwill, where Rutherford School is going to reopen, and you know, where we've had fatalities on Hammond Bay. And the Applecross in Portsmouth, you know, I don't think there's a school there as such. So I just, those are things I would point out. And the other final thing is that the roundabout at Nelson and Rutherford has a very long straight stretch to it. There's a 30-kilometer speed limit, but nobody observes it. And people tear into that, and the school is just around the corner, and it should have speed bumps, I think. That's it.
Just talking about that.
Yeah, the Rutherford corridor and roundabout is something that seems to have blown up of late, and I'm not. My staff and I are aware that there has been some concerns over the years, and we've kind of made some incremental changes to see if we can address it. But I think it's at a point now where we need to take a more aggressive approach, and so we're taking that back and looking to see what options are on the table.
Jennifer?
When you're putting in crosswalks, what's your perspective on putting in the ones that are not just the straight white lines, but the designs? Because I have noticed that they're becoming more popular, and at first I thought, oh, that's great. They're like artistic and they're interesting, and they create a certain amount of energy. But over time, I've found that if, for example, driving around somewhere like Victoria, there's just like too much visually going on. So I'm just wondering what the department's approach is on those.
So my initial perspective was trending towards the more conservative and a little bit cautious about getting too elaborate and going too far. Interestingly, that there's a lot of literature coming out now that speaks to how having, I'm going to say not overly ornate, but some sort of an artistic crosswalk actually does seem to be more beneficial for pedestrians. And so, there's a little bit of theory that it increases more driver awareness, that it creates more pedestrian activity, and so there's a bit of a critical mass component to it. So just by sheer numbers, there's more pedestrians. One of the bigger concerns that I've always had is the cost of maintenance and installation. They can become very, very expensive, like easily over $100,000. And so if you do have that very ornate sort of patterning, if you ever have to do repairs to them, you have to have special, basically puzzle pieces cut to replace them and reinstall them. And so, I guess ultimately I'm open to the discussion. There's a few that we're looking at on a couple of streets right now, and we're trying to actively move forward. I think it's a bit of a eyes wide open approach. And so we're just going to keep moving forward. I mean, we've got a brand new one downtown, which looks amazing. So.
Ruth?
Hi. You may have already spoken to this, but how were these locations selected?
So I very, very briefly glanced over it, but when we went through the whole city plan process, we actually developed a prioritization process model criteria to create a GIS model for our entire city that reviews all of the existing crosswalks. And I'm saying reviews existing crosswalks quite explicitly because we're not looking at new crosswalks. And so that's a whole different can of worms. And so that process, as I said, looks at speed and volumes and crossing distance and surrounding land use and safety history, collisions, and then the socioeconomic factors. And so that goes sort of through the grinder, and we've just been incrementally working through those sort of from the most in need to where we get to now. And so with that, there is one sort of caveat to that. It's attention directing. I mean, it's a tool from a computer, and we still need to sort of scrutinize the outputs from it and look at it and go, okay, well, this might be the highest priority one according to the model, but there's a capital project coming in 3 years, so let's wait to do that. Or, there's other instances where intersections still have high ranking, but they may already be signalized. And so we really don't have another higher level of control to apply to them. So it just highlights that it's a high volume, intersection with a lot of pedestrian demand. And so we may have other opportunities to do things, but it's sort of, it's beyond the scope of this tool.
So follow-up question, when were these numbers, like you say, crunched, put into this?
So this model, we're actually working on updating the process component of it, and so they're probably 2 or 3 years old, but it's the same basic information we've been running with through that point. So we're still kind of ranking everything equally against each other.
Kevin?
Hey, thanks. Is there an opportunity, or how much does just public input factor into it? Like I hear my community, everybody's community is all the same, everyone gets input from people, but you know, around Cavendish and Jinglepot, like it's a park zone and people are ripping, like Monterey, Cavendish on that side, and people rip through that thing constantly, right? And it's just the nature of it. People got places to go, I get it, but it's right by a park. There's a crosswalk there. It seems like an ideal solution. And is there an opportunity for people to advocate from their neighborhood that sort of factors into that, or?
We really are trying to focus we tried to focus the public input component on when we were developing the model. Now, obviously, we can evolve it over time, and so if we're hearing from the community that there's areas that are raising concerns, but they're not aligning with the model, that would inform us on revisiting the algorithms in the model and go, okay, well, if this is what we're hearing, why is it not tracking with our model? But I will take that full circle to, we also want to see what the numbers are telling us. And so opinion is interesting, but the facts are the facts. And so we want to make sure that the changes we're making are actually having the positive impact on the operation of the road, reducing collisions, reducing speed, improving safety.
Sure. Yeah, just a quick follow-up. You mentioned like inputting all of your variables that you put into it, like speed. Where does that information come from? Is that from, the pressure sensors that are placed around town occasionally? Because there's a bit of a selection bias there probably in terms of like what you're looking at too, and you might not capture other areas that are less policed or have less input.
So to get around that, we actually base it on road classification. And so then that sort of takes the bias out of it. But then we go back and actually do field data collection with radar counters. And so it's just a little box that is pretty invisible usually. So.
Oh, thanks.
Doug?
Is there any prospect of a raised crosswalk at Departure Bay and Windgrove, just for traffic moderation, speed concerns?
Never say never. In Departure Bay Beach Corridor has been an interesting conversation over the last 5 or 6 years. And we've tried different things to modify driver behavior, reduce speeds, and improve pedestrian crossing ability. And so it's possible. I think that's a question that would really become sort of a broader discussion point as to whether or not, I think the first conversation to take place there is, what do we think is the appropriate speed in that corridor, and should it be changed seasonally, or is it just a straight, nope, it's 40 kilometers or 30 kilometers or whatever it is, and that's what it is year round. And so that's a fairly complicated discussion to undertake. So
Just wanted to add, and Jamie will remember this because I brought it up at council, when they dropped the speed limit down to 40, the speeds actually went up from when it was at 50. Remember that?
there was some odd behavior, and it was a little bit weird
Speeds
when we
actually
did
went
that.
up.
It is, but
Right now, we change it seasonally to 40.
Yeah, it drops back down.
Just past Moat on the hill.
Yeah.
And then down and around.
Well, that's my bad.
Yeah, it gets changed seasonally. Well, no, it gets changed, and that's another problem too. When you change it seasonally, people don't always look. They just assume 50, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's
that
interesting.
just seems one of the advantages of the raised crosswalk. It's always there, and it
100%, and that's exactly why we're probably using them so liberally right now. We see really significant, consistent improvements to just overall transportation performance. So
Thank you. I'll just say, the one good thing that council finds with having this system, it can take the politics out of it. I mean, it still comes in, but we've now have a system where we can say, well, no, you're saying this, but, you know, we have this in this area because this is what the facts are showing us. Because sometimes people's perception is not always accurate. Like, you know, especially if you're coming around a corner, people have a tendency, they're doing like 60, and well, actually, they're only doing 40, but it looks it because corner makes you look like you're speeding. So it's just, it's a good system, and I think they've done well on it, and it'd be good if we could increase the budget, but right now, like everybody else, we're in tough times, so it's what it is. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Rose, appreciate your time. And I think you're free to leave if you choose, because there's nothing on the rest that will impact you, I don't think. Councillor Eastmere?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point about the crosswalk at Wallace Street, like acknowledging that there already is one, we didn't have a comment about it when we brought it to the accessibility committee, but I do personally also find that one a little bit hard to justify, given that there is already a crosswalk in that spot and it's not.
It's a crosswalk to nowhere, you know.
Well,
there's nothing on that other side of the street.
That's what sidewalk.
Well, yeah, it's true. But you can cross at the lights at either place. And
Yeah, so I wondered, like, is that something is there interest in?
I think there'll be interest at the financial committee by council on that one as well.
So if there was a recommendation from this
Yeah.
committee, it might
Colin?
be.
Well, isn't there a big condo development that's being built just up the street from it?
It's
So-
down further.
Are you talking about the TELUS
Yeah.
one on, like, across from the
On Fitzwilliam.
squash club?
Like right beside the Tim Hortons?
Campbell Street and Wallace. Nowhere near there.
That's not where that is?
No.
There was going to be one in the empty parking lot adjacent the Sark building, but
It's
that's
no longer going.
not.
No, the one on Franklin or Wallace by,
Yeah, there's two going in further down on Wallace,
Okay.
the TELUS build, and then there's the one at Campbell and Wallace, but they're a little bit
Okay.
I
further
just
down.
think the point is there is already a sidewalk. Why do we want another one on the other side of the street when so many other places are missing them?
yeah.
Now, that's just my concern. Like, I think about it, like if a person can't take 20 seconds to cross the street to go across, I don't know. Ruth?
Another question I had was, I was just surprised when I saw the crosswalks coming up, especially once socioeconomic factors and the high walkability that comes with, you know, not owning a vehicle. I was just surprised that the South End or Harewood didn't have an additional sidewalk or correction.
I think.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and
That was
I think
surprising to
because
me.
what's happened is that there was quite a few were done in
Crosswalk.
previous years, the crosswalks, like Bruce got done, lights went in on, what is it, 4th and Bruce, so there's been a lot of investment. There was the bike lanes that went in, and there was pedestrian improvements when the bike lanes went in up on 4th going up, so I think that's one of the reasons why. Yeah, because there has been actually a lot of city investment into that area, so, yeah. So is there any recommendations this committee wants to make on these, or any thoughts or ideas, or are you okay with the way it sits? I know, Doug, you had some concerns. Is there anything you'd like to say further on it?
I'd just like to recommend that
Can you turn on your mic? Sorry, yeah, just for at home.
I would just like to recommend that they consider giving a higher priority to a raised crosswalk at 2nd Street and Camp Place. And, you know,
Okay. Do you want to make that as a motion?
Yes, I'll do those.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Seconded by Kim. Any further discussion? I would say, and probably the rationale for that is because of the school, and it's it's probably the shortest school zone I've seen in the city. It's like 1 block. So, yeah. Kevin?
Yeah, just for discussion, I'd say, I mean, I think we can all probably pick places out of our heads where we think it should go. So in terms of an actual motion to council, I don't know that that's necessarily appropriate, because I would say Monterey and I mean, we could all pick a place in our neighborhood. So I just wonder if there's a way to sort of recommend, I don't know, I'd almost like, I appreciate like there's the financial constraints, and the way that it's chosen sounds very sophisticated, but maybe there's a way to sort of like divvy up that money or leave some room for public input for a couple of the selections each year, or maybe there's another way we could frame a motion that might
Okay,
broaden
let's think of that.
ability to
I'm
choose.
going to look to Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff came to the meeting today with the intention to share this information with the committee and to hear the discussion and input. I think that that's the case, that the staff are hearing input that has been shared so far at the table. And as long as it would be okay with the committee, staff can take that information from this meeting and consider it as this item moves forward, whether it's this year or in the future cycles.
Is that okay with you, Doug, to do that? Or?
I've just picked this one because it's already in the planning stage, and I'm just trying to keep it simple. So
I'm going to turn to Jamie, or Mr. Rose, sorry.
So I think maybe there's a couple of comments I'd make. So I think that because we've identified Second and Camp as one that we looked at and opted not to move forward with this year, I think that could come to the conversation next week, and council could debate the sort of switch them or move them around, because there is a bit of latitude in that option. With respect to, I would say, revisiting the overall process and maybe including some sort of a element of public input, I think Councillor Armstrong kind of highlighted that having a system that is founded on the data really sort of keeps the personal elements out of it. And so we definitely understand that there are areas that people are going to have very strong opinions of, and that's absolutely something that, you know, can be brought to the discussion table when reports are brought forward. I think that maybe if there's interest, there could be some consideration to just maybe at some future GPC or something, reviewing the process overall and probably answering questions as to how we operate right now. And if there's a discussion beyond that, we could do that.
So what I can do, or Councillor Eastman, one of us, we can bring this forward to the Finance and Audit Committee, saying that there was general conversation around the table. These were concerns we heard. Would that be fair? And we can talk about how, like the Jingle Pot area, which I've heard before, has become a racetrack. What are we looking at? Fairway School, which is already in the plan. Raised crosswalk for Departure Bay. So, and that the committee would like to see more investigation into how there's assignments to this. Would that be fair, or something like that? I'm just looking for.
I'm fine if the chair and Hillary and you think that's fine. You have a better idea what works and doesn't work with council. So
I think it's like, the purpose is just to bring forward the committee's concerns, and because I take what Kevin said, and it's a very valid point, not a motion, but if we can bring it forward as concerns were raised by the committee as to, you know, selection and from their perspective, lack of community input, although it's been explained by Jamie why, but it still gets the message back to council that they, you know, they want to see a little bit more robust discussion around this. And I take what Mr. Rose says is that, you know, perhaps it is a good thing for that we could do it at a GPC where more of the public is invited, like, then all the public's invited that can speak to it, right? So, I've Colin and then you, Kevin.
Sorry, yeah, I don't have anything further to say. What you said was a lot more diplomatic than I was going to say, so thanks.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, is there information available that sort of shows a ranking of potential places? Like maybe people are interested, like if it's like, hey, next year, this is kind of what's in our mind, or this is what's ranking, and maybe that would forestall some of that
there,
feedback, if
yeah.
people knew it had been considered.
Go ahead, Mr. Rose.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. So that's actually one of the projects we're working on right now, is actually creating a public kind of, I mean, working titles dashboard, but basically what we're trying to do is create an option where residents can go in and look, frankly, for themselves and say, okay, well, here's where areas of concern are. Here's how the crosswalks are currently ranking. You know, in my ideal world, really, we'd be sharing all of the information so that everybody can see what we see and understand why we're saying this should be this versus that. And so that's something we're working with our RT group this year to work on. So in thinking about that, maybe the opportunity is, once we've got a draft of that or got something to present, that might be a good opportunity to kind of bring this conversation back around and talk about sort of creating that added transparency of how we navigate things.
And also, I believe there was a GPC on this where we had a pretty robust report from you, and I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I see Councillor Hammond's nodding yes, so perhaps we could find that and we can just send it out to the committee for reference so that you can see, because I believe it was ranked in that one, like they showed how the ranking system happened and.
We
yeah.
actually
Yeah.
presented a couple of iterations
Yes,
to council,
yeah.
so we could sort of see, how we're using this information, how we're presenting it, and how we're modeling it. And so we can definitely pull together some of the links to the meetings, just
Yeah,
for
for those
background anyway.
that are interested. Not everybody might be, but then you'll have it if you're interested, so. So I know we do have a motion on the floor. Do you want to withdraw that based on the
I was going
conversation?
to ask, do you want me to table it or withdraw it, or?
Ms. Brucker?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So based on the council procedure bylaw, the motion can be withdrawn with consent of all members present. So if we can just ensure there is full consent, that can be done.
Is everybody fine with withdrawing the motion?
I'm fine with, yeah.
Okay, seeing everybody's fine, so that's what we'll do. And myself and Councillor Eastmere will cover this off at Finance and Audit on Wednesday. Thank you. Okay, moving on now, and we're going fast. We're going to have a verbal update, read the drop-in hub overview of the mitigation strategy and impact on the neighborhood, and I think that's going to be introduced by Ms. Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Just before I begin, I just want to clarify the verbal report that I'm sharing with the Public Safety Committee is really to provide an overview of the mitigation strategies that have been done around the hub to try to mitigate some of the impacts of the service on the neighborhood and the individuals that are accessing the hub as well. And so what we're actually looking for today is suggestions from the Public Safety Committee member on possibly other mitigation strategies that we can do to help with the impact in the neighborhood. So that's what we're looking for today. And just also to let the committee know through the chair that there will be a wholesome update going to council next month about, all the services, the outcomes of the services, including collecting impact from the neighborhood, looking at calls for service and RCMP calls and that kind of stuff as well. So that will be going before council as an update. So
Thank you.
So just to begin, just for some of the committee members, I just want to give really high-level overview, just a little bit of background, just for folks around the table, about the services that are being offered at the hub right now. So right now it's operated by 2 organizations. We have Island Crisis Care Society that's operating the daytime services. So they're providing the basic needs services and health-related services during the day from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And Nanaimo Family Life Association runs the overnight shelter with 20 beds from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. So the hub is the only daily service in the city that's providing basic needs services on a drop-in basis to the unsheltered population. And in addition, other service providers are providing service on-site at the hub. So there's quite a few number of different services that are coming to the hub. So Island Health, we have BC Heart outreach workers, Nanaimo First Nation. So there's a whole bunch of different service providers that are coming towards the hub as well, and just connecting people to housing, shelter, could be treatment, other health services as well. So also working with our Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization to look at some of the stats that are coming in. These are just really high level. Just during the first quarter of 2025, the hub has served at least 207 unique individuals, and on average is receiving almost 70 visits each day. And individuals that are accessing the drop-in hub are some of our most complex individuals with the most complex needs, and usually are individuals that don't access services. So for example, the SPO reports that about 33.5% of the hub users are Indigenous. So this is actually a really high percentage compared to other services that they might be accessing. As of May 21st, 2025, there's been 114 supportive housing registry applications that have been completed at the hub, and these applications are required for any individual to access any type of BC housing units. And the hub is also an access point for BC Housing's new Heart and Hearth program. So those are the units that are coming to the city, and that's an MOU between BC Housing and the city for these units as well. The other thing, reporting from Island Crisis Care and the daytime service, even without the full hearth units coming on site, 10 hub users have been housed, and many of those folks are on the waiting list for the hearth units there as well. And just a reminder for some folks around the table that don't know, the hub is at 55 Victoria Road with entrance off Nichols Street. And in addition to the hub services being at that building, the building also houses another range of health services, so including addiction clinics, a harm reduction service, and an outreach pharmacy. So there's been longstanding concerns about this location prior to the inception of the hub. So concerns are related to the services being provided and the complex needs of those individuals accessing these services. And so it's been residents and businesses in the area have reported open drug use, disturbing and traumatic behaviors, individuals being victimized, criminal activity, and social disorders such as debris, human waste, and drug paraphernalia. While anecdotal reports suggest that some of this activity has decreased in other parts of the downtown area and on some parts of Victoria Road since the hub opened, it's now shifted concentration to Nichols Street on the other side of 55 Victoria. Since the opening of the hub, we're also hearing new concerns specific to traffic safety, in addition to the ongoing issues of loitering and disruptive behavior along Nichols Street. Again, a more detailed overview will be provided to council at an upcoming meeting. So to respond, city staff have been meeting with United Way, who is the community entity with Reaching Home. That's the other funding body for this service, Island Crisis Care Society, Nanaimo Family Life. And together, we've developed a few different strategies aimed at both supporting this highly complex population and reducing the impact on the surrounding neighborhood. So that's what I would like to kind of run through with the committee today. So under enhanced coordination and security, hub service providers are now coordinating regular meetings with all the tenants at 55 Victoria. This has never happened before. The services in there haven't ever taken a coordinated response to also just take a look externally outside of the building. So we had our first meeting in April. So these will be ongoing monthly meetings that we're holding with all the other tenants in the building. There's been weekly operational meetings that are being held by Island Crisis Care and Nanaimo Family Life with many other supports. So city attends as well. And then we also have our Nanaimo Systems Planning Organization and our CSOs also attend. And that's just to troubleshoot or improve logistics. A community advisory committee or a CAC or some type of that is being considered for the hub. And we're thinking that the group would meet regularly. We're actually working with some members of the South End Community Association. They could meet monthly or even bi-monthly to address emerging trends and to work on solutions collaboratively. And we can include public reps as from the neighborhood, funders, and the public safety officials, depending on how that's, we're just trying to work out some dates right now. And then under facility and service management, we have service providers who are working with the building owner to expand the indoor space, increasing daytime capacity. We're hopeful that this will help reduce the number of people lingering outside. Staff are also working with users to ensure carts and personal belongings are kept tidy and don't block the sidewalks. Due to fire regulations and a lack of storage, these carts cannot be brought inside. Belongings are only ever brought inside during the overnight shelter hours and only for sheltered guests. So that's been one of the challenges we've been dealing with. On March 10th, 2025, BC Housing provided additional funds to the Nanaimo Family Life Association, allowing them to expand their shelter hours, whereas before it was 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., so there was quite a considerable gap between the two services. And so now, as I mentioned, it's 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. daily. And with this new operating hours, it technically means that there's staff on site 24/7, but there is a gap in between the services. So in the morning, from 8 till 9, the overnight shelter closes, and then during the day, the daytime service opens, and then from 4 till 5, there's also a gap. So we do see an increase of loitering on the sidewalk during that time, as staff are kind of doing the staff turnover at that time. And as mentioned, hub users are being prioritized through BC Housing's Heart and Hearth programs, and we have members of the Heart team that are now on site weekly to complete the assessments and housing applications. We have one Hearth site that's already operational with 50 units, and the 3 more sites with 187 units will be open between now and the fall, and hub users are being added to the tenanting list at this time. And work is ongoing with the building owner to explore other entry options to the hub space. There are some fire code, increased staffing requirements, and financial costs that need to be considered prior to making any entry changes into this space as well. Another key area of focus that we've been working on is boundaries for service users. So staff with both organizations are setting clear expectations for behavior. Those engaging in disruptive or unsafe activity are issued a break in service and will not be able to access the hub service, sometimes for up to 48 hours. And if individuals don't comply, the CSO or RCMP are called to remove them from the property. ICCS has also started to engage peers to keep Nickel Street sidewalk clean and tidy, and with staffing support, they're hoping to expand this to the surrounding area once they can secure funding to support the peers. Other RCMP and public safety measures, there's been noted drug dealing activity outside the hub, especially on Nickel Street, and all drug activity has been reported to the RCMP, so both service providers are doing that. 2 additional CCTV cameras are now being installed to help monitor and report any unsafe or criminal behavior, and the footage will be available for viewing for hub staff and supervisors who are off-site via their cell phone. City staff has also requested proactive enforcement from RCMP, especially in relationship to the drug activity around the building, and the RCMP bike unit does attend the site on occasion. Hub service providers have designated staff also to monitor the outside space and redirect inappropriate use. Under city services and support, we brought Mr. Barry Hornby here today to answer any questions if the committee does have, but he can speak to some of the other activities that they're doing. But in general, the CSOs are present and around the hub about 2 to 3 times daily. And just since January up until May 10th, there have been 83 service files related to proactive patrols by CSOs to that block of Nickel Street, and another 89 specific assistant requests from hub staff. So hub staff are using the CSOs quite frequently. The city's graffiti contractor has been active in cleaning the Nickel Street side of the building. The clean team, the city's clean team attends the site daily with CSOs to clean sidewalks, remove debris, and do a regular deep cleaning in the area about once per week. And they are kind of focusing around all the way up to kind of Finlayson and down. And just in relationship to that, the city staff are working with neighborhood reps to identify other hot spots that we can support with the clean team proactively with CSOs as well. And city staff monitor weekly for doing a check-in with the service providers, and we visit the site regularly to monitor activity, ensure service agreements are being upheld. City staff also monitor weekly with the support of a real estate team for any other leasable locations that may be more appropriate for the hub service. So that's just a summary of the things that we've done so far. So lots of coordination and planning and ongoing work is happening. You can see that the challenges are complex and multifaceted, and unfortunately, the strategies don't address the root causes of mental health and substance use issues. The hub's purpose is to alleviate the impacts of homelessness, provide basic needs to individuals, and get them connected to health and housing services. So we're really welcoming any input or ideas from the committee today, and any feedback is helpful in making sure that we're doing everything that we can, not only to reduce the impacts on the neighborhood, but to ensure vulnerable residents continue to access the support they need in a respectful way.
I'd just like to ask Mr. Hornby just to give us an overview of, from the CSO perspective, of what you're seeing and what you're doing, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're there 2 to 3 hours a day on and off through a 10-hour shift. So usually in the morning, we're requested through the hub staff. There's that turnover between 8 and 9 where we will monitor what's going on there. They will work to educate and let people know what's going on while we're clearing the rest of the downtown. Usually there's only 2 CSOs on at a time, and we're clearing Commercial Street, Diana Krall Plaza, Maffeo Sutton Park, and the rest of the downtown. Usually by 9 or 10 o'clock, we will get requests from hub staff that have people that are not abiding by keeping the sidewalk open. One of the challenges we see is with the change in the drugs that it's extremely hard to get people to move. The benzopines in drugs right now are making people pretty much unconscious, where we're having to activate 911 for overdoses or people that can't manage themselves. So that takes up a lot of time to get people up and going. We have had some positive interaction with peers where they're attempting to get people up and into the hub once it's open. One of the problems as well is people will not leave that area to use, so they just go out onto the sidewalk and partake in substance use. They won't walk to the OPS. Smoking's not permitted, of course, inside the building, so it's out on the sidewalk. And currently, right now, with the heat as well, it's hot in the building, so it's cooler to be outside. And then these individuals know how far the hub staff patrol, and they just loiter outside of the area that the hub staff can attend to. So we work closely with them. When chattels and belongings are left, we'll tag them or remove them and put them in a safe space so they're not being left there all day. Again, as Ms. Wood said, a lot of these individuals are accessing other services in the building, AVI, the outreach pharmacy, addiction services. They leave somebody to look after their belongings, and then it's forgotten, and we're called to deal with that aspect of things. Yesterday, we had a substance-affected person that was wandering in and out of traffic, and one of the CSO members was able to avert a potentially dangerous situation by getting that individual safely over to the sobering beds on Halliburton Street for their safety. So a lot of time is spent there. It takes priority on the team's radar, and we try to get there when we're called. But there's a lot of work to go along there, and then patrol the rest of the neighborhood as well. So the alley off of Finlayson, and one of the side effects of pushing people up and down the sidewalk is the cul-de-sac at Finlayson now, and the alleyway in the 100 block of Nickel Street now has people in there. And then it spills off into the vacant lot below the old Firehouse Grill as well, where people are on private property, and that area was once fenced and now is unfenced, and people will congregate in there. So it's, you push in an area and then you just displace it somewhere else, and that's the challenge when you have one space for the whole city, is that's the one place we have.
I would just like to add that the city has been advocating for more provincial dollars, and unfortunately, I can't share the response, but you can read which one. No? Because it's intergovernment to intergovernment, but you can read between the lines. Also, Mr. Hornby, could you also touch on the point that you're not there as an enforcement, you're there to try and connect? Like, people seem to assume that you can arrest and do all this stuff, but that's not really your sole purpose?
No, our approach in our community safety unit is the compassion-based approach to hooking people up with the services with Island Health and other community groups. We're sworn peace officers under the community charter. We carry defensive tools for protection of ourselves and others, but we're not the police. We're not in charge of arresting people. We can enforce our bylaws, whether that's the public nuisance bylaw related to obstructing the sidewalk, but we do lean on our RCMP partners for assistance, and we'll quite often do joint patrols with them and Island House outreach teams to get people in contact with services. Many individuals that we're dealing with are deep in mental health and addiction crisis, and their main focus is either getting substance use, or they're not focused on getting inside or getting water or food, and hooking them up and building that relationship with them is we've had some success with getting people up and going. We don't have the resistance when we asked someone to go there. They see us come in, and takes a little while, but they will get up and eventually comply to either move into the facility or into other public spaces that every community member can use.
Thank you. And then now I'd like to go to Chief Doyle, because we've been getting lots of complaints in about the fires that are being started throughout the area with photographs obtained. Can you speak to what your process is?
Sorry, Chair. In respect to processes, What specifically are you referring to?
Like what you do when you get there, like, because people are asking, why aren't these people being arrested, et cetera, and.
Oh, okay. Thank you,
that
Chair.
type of thing,
Yeah, I mean, it's the same process in terms of when there's a fire, people call 911, we respond, depending on how the call is reported. Sometimes we'll have a varying response, whether RCMP accompanies or BCS is there, depending on what the primary complaint is. When we arrive, we extinguish the fire, and then we'll report to any other agencies that's necessary to get more support. So that's.
So if you feel there's arson involved, it'd be referred to the RCMP?
Anytime there's any criminality with fire, it's a RCMP matter.
And then I'm just going to ask the superintendent to comment a little bit on that as well, please.
Yeah, so obviously we've covered a lot of bases in regards of what all the partners are doing in regards to this. So as mentioned earlier, we do a lot of patrols with the CSOs. I know the bike units is quite engaged, almost on a daily basis. But and we have as well as our site downtown enforcement that do patrol the area. It is challenging as far as like if there's evidence of arson, to the point of Chief Doyle. We do attend, and when we try to gather as much evidence as we can, and if we feel there's enough to support charges, we do forward report to Crown Council. They make the decision to move ahead. Same thing for the behavior on Nichols Street or on Victoria Street. When we attend, there's criminality involved. If it's appropriate, arrests are made and charges are laid, and then we go through the process.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'm going to open up the floor. Colin?
Yeah, thank you for the report and all the comments. I think, frankly, without the CSOs there and fire and police keeping an eye on it, this would be a lot worse than it is. So, thank you. I have a couple questions and suggestions, but I wanted to just read very briefly a small excerpt of an email that was shared with Mayor and Council and provincial MLAs recently by a landowner that has tenants that live across the street from 55 Victoria Road on the Nichols Street side. And this is just a brief excerpt of it. The police files are in the dozens from our property alone and continue to mount daily. I have seen there are well over 100 calls to emergency services for this location since it opened January 2nd, 2025. By way of devolving the authority to service providers who are not accountable to any of the neighbors and funded the operations of the shelter with our tax money. We continue to be inundated with crime and threats to our safety. My tenants have been attacked and our property has been damaged. I have installed lighting and had to replace windows and cut down trees for safety. I am unable to rent my below market rent apartments, and while I have hundreds, 600 plus of hits on my current ad, nobody will rent in this location. The email goes on to request that the city declare this property a nuisance property. This wouldn't be the first time that residents in the surrounding area have advocated and requested the city to declare 55 Victoria Road a nuisance property. 55 Victoria Road is a privately owned building. It is not owned by the city. It has a private owner, and the owner collects lease rent money from the hub services, as well as the addictions clinics, the AVI Health Clinic, and he is also the proprietor of the Outreach Pharmacy itself. I have personally asked the BC College of Pharmacists to confirm to the public that what is going on at that property has resolved and diffused its perceived and conflicts of interest. I've received zero communication from the College of Pharmacists after I pressed them for just asking them to confirm that there is a mitigation strategy for the conflicts of interest, the perceived conflicts of interest, the potential conflicts of interest that may be associated with the dispensing of safer supply, which are taxpayer funded, the the contracts and business relationships between the pharmacy and the AVI Health Clinic and the addictions clinics. The AVI Health Clinic receives north of $3 million a year from Island Health. And the hub services are 100% also funded by public taxpayers. And the 55 Victoria Road is a privately owned property, and it is run like a business. So my question is, what can the city do to ensure that the business licenses that are granted to the operators of this building are not engaged in conflicts of interest that may be putting the public at risk?
Mr. LeBaire is going to turn to you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I've got a few notes because I was anticipating the question. So as far as nuisance property, there's 4 points I'd like to share with the committee. First of all, the use of the property is legal and it supports public health. Services operating within this building, which includes outreach pharmacy, the addiction health clinics, and the city-supported drop-in hub, they're all legally sanctioned, they're professionally operated, and they play a vital role in the community's public health and harm reduction strategy. These services are essential to some of the most vulnerable members of the population and are located at the property by design and service delivery considerations. Second point is the nuisance behavior occurs adjacent to, not on the property in most cases. While there are legitimate concerns about loitering, drug activity, disturbances, and vandalism in the surrounding area, these behaviors are substantially occurring in the public realm, that being the streets, sidewalks, and adjacent alleys, and not directly on the private property itself, although I will acknowledge that some of these events do occur in their parking lot. The city's nuisance abatement bylaw is intended to address chronic issues emanating from or occurring on a specific property where the property owner is either directly responsible for or enabling the nuisance behaviors. In this case, there is no indication that the building owner is permitting or facilitating illegal activity on the premises, nor are they failing to meet their obligations to manage their property. Third point is that services are not the source of the nuisance. And it's important to distinguish the correlation between correlation and causation. While it's true the existence of the essential services draws individuals experiencing homelessness or substance use to the area, the services themselves are not creating the nuisance activity. Rather, they are part of the broader solution aimed at stabilizing lives and reducing harm. It's important to understand that if you designate a building as a nuisance solely because it hosts life-saving and supportive services, this would set a very concerning precedence and risk undermining efforts to provide care to those most in need. Lastly, and that's why we're here discussing this tonight, the city continues to address public realm issues through other means. We, as a city, acknowledge the impacts of ongoing disorder to the surrounding residents and businesses, and we all remain committed to responding through enforcement, outreach, and coordination with service providers. The CSOs, the bylaw service, and RCMP continue to maintain an active presence in there and respond to incidents. We're also working with the service agencies to provide behaviors outside the facilities to reinforce community standards. So in conclusion, the designation of a legally operating service hub as a nuisance property is not an appropriate or effective use of the nuisance abatement bylaw. The city will continue to use all available tools and respond to public disorder in the area, but must balance enforcement with the continued delivery of critical services that support long-term community well-being.
Follow-up, Colin?
Can you come back to me?
Okay, I'll come back after.
Thank you.
Kim, did you have?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a lot of issues around the hub and the fact that there are other service providers in there where our folks that are unhoused are already accessing services. So it seemed like it might have been a good idea, but did you not think about the impact when you chose the service provider at that location, that there might be issues along the street and crossing the street, like people who are inebriated in some manner, kind of walking back and forth? Was that not taken into consideration before you chose?
I can answer
provider
that
in
because it's a
location?
council decision that makes that. That was discussed at length at the council table. Problem is, we have no other places. People will not rent. There's,
Well, you do.
well, tell me where.
Rise Bridge,
No, we're not going there.
and they have a larger capacity as well. But I'm just saying that you're concentrating it all in one area. And yes, people don't want it in general in their neighborhoods at all. They don't want it. But concentrating it in one area and also only having 21 spaces for, 600, 700, 800 people who are unhoused in our community or suffering from poverty, doesn't make sense to me.
I'll talk to the province. They're the ones with the big purse strings.
Well,
you know?
who made the decision where the location was going to be? That was my question.
Oh,
How
go
was
ahead,
that-
Christie.
Through the chair, Councillor Armstrong is right. We definitely looked at other locations for this service. And as I mentioned in my verbal report, we look weekly for other options. There's not a lot of options. So the selection of the service provider was actually done through a rigorous evaluation process that was held with United Way, because they are the community entity for Reaching Home. And so there was an evaluation process that they held, and they collected expressions of interest. Our hope as a city working with United Way was that we would have 2 hubs. And it was at that time that it was discovered that there wasn't enough funds to do that with the current lease rates and what was available for leasing. So through that evaluation process, service providers were identified that had the best experience and the best ability to provide the service. And then location search was done at that time.
Thank you. Follow-up, Kim?
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense to me that a space that holds 21 to 24 people, I think, is the capacity for the number of people we have unhoused in our community. That just doesn't make sense to me. And to have it concentrated in that area that Colin has pointed out already has a large concentration of people accessing services. They can access their services and then go elsewhere for their hub services, for meals, clothing, whatever it is that they might need.
There was a motion made by Councillor Hemmons, which was passed by council, that, asking for these services to be moved around the community and stuff, and staff is very aware of that. Since I've been on council, which is, 8-9 years now, we can't find a lot of locations, like for the supportive housing units, all that kind of stuff, they're not there. And
as far as the services that we're talking about now, like the hub, there is an alternate location as well. It's not a preferred provider, is what I'm saying. And part of what I'm hearing, like when I look at the Wet City's website, they believe in trauma-informed practice, that they work within a trauma-informed framework. I understand that part of the reason that Rise Bridge wasn't chosen was because they wouldn't allow enforcement to come onto the property.
I'm not going to talk about any individual
Okay, so
because I
then
can't.
let's stop then, because that was another alternative.
Colin, I'll come back to you as a second time speaker, Jennifer, and then Ruth.
So I'll start with my question first. So at what point does the arresting RCMP get involved in order to deal with some of these behavior? So that's my question at the beginning, because I was first of all, thank you for usually the conversations from decision makers around these subjects is just focusing on the positives and saying that everything's fine when, as people walking down the streets or talking to colleagues or people that we know who live in the area, it's not fine. So thank you, first of all, for the candor in listing some of the problems, because when you know that, then at least everybody's being honest about it. It's an intractable problem that, we didn't create, the municipality didn't create, but it's there. You've got to do something with it, and nobody really knows what it is. You mentioned that you're working with the staff around setting boundaries, and then the RCMP get called, and then I'm kind of thinking, well, what happens after that? I'm assuming these people get dropped off in the street, and that's, the problem
turn
just
that to
gets
Eric.
moved somewhere else.
Sorry, Superintendent Rochette.
So I'm wondering at what point it shifts from a compassionate approach to an approach where there are criminal law consequences.
Yeah, I guess to a chair, it's not a black and white answer, but ultimately, if there's criminality involved, depending on the call that's received, right? Depending of, like if it's a 911 call related to an assault, obviously the RCMP gets involved. If BILA or CSO are on patrol, they notice some criminality, they call us, we attend. Now, if there's enough evidence for us to move ahead with charges, the individual gets arrested. Depending on circumstances, depending on criminal history, the individual can be released with the promise to appear in court at a later date, or remanded in custody to appear in front of a judge within 24 hours. And then we're at the mercy of the court decision as to what's going to happen next. If the person is released by a judge, a lot of times several conditions are imposed, and the person is released. And just that's the process if there's criminality involved.
Follow up?
Because I think that kind of what I'm getting at is if there is negative behavior at such a level that it is causing distress to the neighboring businesses, I'm assuming that that negative behavior is, there's going to be a significant amount at one level or the other of criminality. And I mean, you know, you can arrest them and they can go before a judge, but eventually, like, the buck's got to stop somewhere. So, I mean, I think, I know there's been a lot of conversation about changing bail regulations, and I think some of that is important to this conversation, because if the same people get picked up for an assault, for, you know, abusing a staff member, and then they just get let out again, I don't think that that's going to help any part of the situation.
I'm just going to weigh in, because a lot of times it's not assaultive behaviors or whatever. It could be somebody's yelling or screaming, and these people don't know they're doing that. Like, some of these people are in such bad mental health conditions, they don't know. And is jail the place for them? In my belief, no, it's not. And I don't think we should be using the criminal system to deal with social issues. It's not fair and it's not right. Now, those that are assaulting, that's a different story, right? Because if somebody's hurting somebody, whether they're a drug user or not, you got to look at the behavior. But the majority of the calls, and please correct me if I'm wrong at the table over there, they're not about assaultive behaviors. There are some, absolutely no doubt, but they're few and far between. A lot of them are about nuisance behaviors. Their garbage being dropped all over the place, feces, but, you know, there's not washrooms for some of them, and when you gotta go, right? So, like, I think that's what a lot of the calls are that are really concerning to the neighbors. Obviously, there's the yelling and screaming, which is disruptive to sleep and whatever, the blocking of the things, but the police will come and move them along. But the problem is, and I know, having watched a lot of the court cases, a lot of these people don't have the mental capacity to even be charged, to be quite honest, because they don't know what they're doing. And you have to prove the mental capacity. They belong getting themselves proper, good mental health supports. Unfortunately, to get proper, good mental health supports, unless you got a really good really good health plan, cost a lot of money. And do you think any of these people have money to get good mental health supports? No. And those that are free and available are booked up, for my understanding, months in advance. So I think it's a much more complex thing than using the police to take them. Like, I think the police should only be, and this is just my viewpoint, and I know I shouldn't get there, but it should be when it's very serious offenses.
So I'm not particularly wedded on necessarily police, but if the behavior is so antisocial that it's having such negative effects on the people around, then there needs to be an option, whether it's some kind of mental health referral where they are no longer in a position that they can do that behavior, or whether it's through the criminal justice system. There needs to be an option within our society to take away that kind of behavior so that it doesn't have all these negative effects on everybody else. Like, that's what it is to live in a society.
I think that's what everybody's been trying to say for years, that we need to get treatment centers and mental health facilities for people that need them. And some are very complex, so they need even more complex care, which doesn't exist right now. I think they've opened up 12 beds recently in, like, how many years? That's not a lot. I mean, we could fill them up just walking down the street here today. Without even looking, you could fill them up, right? So I think that's, again, and it's the advocacy piece that council is doing, like pushing for more mental health treatment, pushing for, like, we not only do we need supportive housing, we also need housing for those that are on the streets for sure, purely just financial reasons, right? So they don't end up turning to that. I also, again, my own personal opinion, I don't believe in warehousing. Like 60 people of high needs shouldn't be in one spot. They need to be like how, in my opinion, CMHA works, which is like 28 is the maximum they will take. And they have the proper supports in place. It's not just a carried, it's somebody that's trained in mental health and knows all this stuff, right? Then you could have those that are just for addictions. It's all different, and you can't just put one person in charge of people that don't have the training. That's just and I think that's what we're doing. Like, we have to look at better systems to move these people so that they can become productive members of society. And some never will be because their mental health has been so impacted by drugs, their brain is so damaged, but we need to support them too, right? But the problem is, city's only got so much money, right? And we try and play ball all the time. Every time the province comes knocking, the city's giving up land, it's giving up staff time. But the province needs to really, really invest, and the feds, because they're the ones that take in 80% of our tax, no more than that, it's 92% of the tax dollars go to provincial and federal. We only get 8% of tax dollars, so. It's a very, and I know what you're saying, and we push for it constantly. It's the advocacy piece that this council does constantly. The problem is we can't share a lot of our advocacy because it's government to government. So we're not allowed to release the documents when we're writing letter after letter and da-da-da. So I hope that sort of answers your question. Then I said, was it Kevin, was your hand up? No, it was Ruth, sorry. Got to make my list, okay. Ruth, Colin, and then
Okay, so this is a lot, right? There's a lot in here. The first thing that I want to talk about is, and I am frustrated, is the predictability of the situation that we're finding ourselves in right now in terms of the condition of the sidewalk and the safety issues. So when this hub was first talked about here at the Safety Committee back in the winter, I was very clear that I had serious concerns about the sidewalk. I had concerns that there weren't going to be staff on the sidewalk permanently. I believe there was some talk about, well, they'll keep their eye out through the windows. So I am frankly frustrated that 5-6 months later, we're finding ourselves in this situation where the average person driving down Nickel is now worried about swerving around debris and people running into the street. We have people doing all manner of things on either side of a highway. I have driven by people who are passed out on the sidewalk and their heads are inches from large vehicles. It is extremely dangerous. And it didn't have to be this way. So that is frustrating to me. The other issue too is when we are concerned about, especially the people that are on the street and their behaviors, and I hear talk of, well, the drugs, have changed, there's benzodiazepines in the drugs. That's been going on for years. That is not new. That did not happen in December of 2024 or January of 2025. That's been the case for a long time, right? So again, that was another predictable factor. It's like a slow motion catastrophe that I could see occurring 6 months ago when I first heard about this. Main and Hastings has one of the highest pedestrian fatality rates in the province, if not the city of Vancouver, period. And they're doing all kinds of things. Now it's 30 kilometers an hour on Hastings. It doesn't matter when you have people stepping in front of buses because they are so high. Or they're running across because they see their dealer, or, their cart flies into traffic. My biggest concern as well about the traffic aspect is that when you're heading north, you can see what's happening. When you're coming, when you're heading south, you can see. When you're going north, you crest a hill. And I predict that we will see a pileup because you're going to come over that hill. And if there are a bunch of cars piled up, you can't see until it's too late. And I drive by it every day. I walk it every day. And it was predictable to me as just someone who lives in the neighborhood. So I understand that nobody will rent. We have to do something. But this level of concentration in one building of this many services, and then to put everyone on that little narrow strip of sidewalk, I'm not here to play the blame game, but we have to rapidly change that entrance. So there's 2 large parking lots adjacent to that building. They used to have very few vehicles in them before the hub opened. When I walked by, I counted 29 vehicles now. Those parking lots are full of vehicles, people I assume who now work at the hub. They're full. I know that you said there's gonna have to be some mitigation of that entrance and some fire issues and maybe more staffing, but I would rather see that than see someone killed, see a pileup. I think all the time about whether I should drive the most direct route to my house or whether I should go down Irwin Street, because I think about when I have my kids in the car, am I gonna kill somebody with my kids in the car? Because they're so out of it and they're just lined up. And it looks like Hastings. We are recreating the downtown east side. And as someone who lived there for 15 years, I don't wanna live there. I moved for a reason. And a lot of people who can move for a reason. A lot of people who work in this industry, the great work to help folks, but they don't want to live in that neighborhood. And I don't see a lot of the people that operate the hub. I don't see a lot of people that work in the addiction clinic. I don't see a lot of the high-profile people, the pharmacist. I don't see them at the Superette. I don't see them at Port Place. They don't live in the South End for a good reason. They don't have to. A lot of people have to. So if we can get that parking lot sorted out so that those people who are all over the sidewalk, inches away from like imminent death, could get off that sidewalk and then actually enforce the bylaw, then we could solve this. But I have very low, I'm gonna put this as politely as I can, I have very low faith in the ability of the planning, the operating, or anything to mitigate the predictable behavior of several dozen people in mental and addiction, complex issues. We knew this. The fact that we can't mitigate this and it's months, it doesn't bode well for Nanaimo if this is the best we can come up with. And I know there's so many smart people in this room. So if we can fast track getting these people off this sidewalk, and the 29 people that work in that building, they're gonna have to park on the street, they're gonna have to park in a parkade like a lot of other people do. That really, I think, is the urgency there is, I don't want to kill somebody with my kids in the car, and I don't want to crest that hill into a pileup,
So can we put that down as an option to look at as the parkade for some mitigation strategies around, to look at? I don't know what the options are, but it's definitely one to look at. Thank you. I have Colin and then Hillary.
Yeah, I think just to follow up on the previous exchange there, I think the bottom line is, when you're looking for suggestions as to what to do, we do have to be very frank when we acknowledge that there are people profiting and benefiting from the situation that we're finding ourselves in. There are people in this province who are making a lot of money and doing very well for themselves with the public money coming into their bank accounts. I think it is incumbent on the city of Nanaimo, if it's not actively administering its business licenses, to ensure that it's not enabling potential or perceived conflicts of interest. It should at the very least be advocating to the province and to the College of Physicians and Surgeons and Pharmacists or whatever to ensure that perceived or potential conflicts of interest are actively diffused. Conflicts of interest are not victimless crimes. They have very real implications for the broader public. We're talking about it, the impacts right now. I think when it comes to the concentration of services, you mentioned Risebridge, it's not just Risebridge and Victoria Road. It's all of the services that are in South Nanaimo and downtown. That concentration it's an aggregate, and the concentration of those services just creates this vacuum. We've essentially created a black hole of human suffering in downtown Nanaimo and South End. And the people that live in the neighborhoods are essentially on the event horizon. People are being traumatized just by living around it. The reason why Risebridge is not a suitable location is because it's in a residential neighborhood with children and elderly. And the number of violent incidents that even people are just witnessing are traumatizing people. Like the whole situation is just traumatizing the entire city. And nobody wants it in their backyard for a damn good reason, because it doesn't belong in anybody's backyard. That's it.
Thank you. Hillary?
Thank you. I just wanted to try to get some clarification on how we're measuring the impact on neighbors and like what we would envision success looking like. And just from like who is being consulted in the neighborhood? Is it just the neighborhood association? And is there a way to expand the number of people that city staff are touching base with so that there's a better sense from the broader neighborhood community about impacts? And just like I've heard that neighbors have called 911 for a guy who had a gun, and the response from RCMP was allegedly that it was a replica, and that it was reasonable, and that the neighbor shouldn't be mad at the guy with the gun, they should be mad at the city, and sort of that when neighbors do flag these issues to RCMP, they're told that they're not a concern, or to only call in the moment when the woman who's mentally ill is banging on your windows, and not like, which is consistently happening. And so I just like to reflect back that the neighborhood is not feeling like their concerns are being validated by the RCMP, and that they're not being responded to effectively. And that when the city says that they've been connecting with neighbors, people who live in the immediate neighborhood are feeling like they haven't been contacted. And so I just wanted to pass that on.
Okay, if I can just stop you there, and I'm going to ask Superintendent Rochette to reply to the RCMP issues, and then I will go over to Ms. Woods after.
So I think through the chair, just a quick comment in regards of, obviously, if there's concerns from, I think the message is this: if you call the police and have concerns with the response, I need to be made aware. So that's concerning when I hear that. Obviously, I'm aware of this file, and this is not the way it's being investigated and the way it's turning into as criminal charges are moving forward, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously, there's been a communication issue there, and if there's concern, I would suggest that that person, if willing to, through you or directly to me, can communicate and if they have questions, concerns, always open door policy. And a lot of time when there's concerns, a lot of times it's communication related. And sometimes it's just at the time, there's just so much we can provide in regards to just evidence gathering and making sure there's no tampering with evidence. But the messaging is concerns, please reach out. And myself or someone from my staff will be more than happy to clarify any questions or concerns, or if calls have been made to the lead investigators and I haven't heard anything back in a few days, I'd like to know what's going on. That's not an issue in regards of making sure that, obviously, when I hear comments about minimizing concerns from citizens, like, it's concerning to me, because we've had open conversation in regards of all the challenges we have in regards of especially the neighborhood that we've been discussing in the last hour or so, and all our members are well aware, and they know exactly what needs to be done and what's expected from management and what's expected from the public in regards to response when you get especially a 911 call.
I'm just going to add too, I think it's very important that if people do have concerns about RCMP, that they do let the superintendent or supervisor know, because if this person is a problem, they need people to complain so they can deal with the issue, because they can't deal with the issue unless there's complaints. And we all know, just like any other occupation, there's good and there's bad, and the only way to deal with the bad is to bring it forward.
Well, and can I just get clarification on how people do connect with you directly? Because I think a lot of folks think that the best way is through the non-emergency line, but if there's a more direct route?
Non-emergency.
Well, usually the non-emergency line is the way to do it, and then you have a conversation. If during business hours, you speak with someone at the detachment, And if you have concerns, if you know the name of the officer, usually they'll liaise you to the officer or his supervisor, which is if your general duty is the watch commander, that will can address any of the concerns. And ultimately, if there's issues and the person's not satisfied, whatever response getting from the watch commander, then it get escalated to management team, myself, or one of the inspectors that would be in place here shortly. But yeah, obviously, the point of contact is a non-emergency phone number during business hours. It's a local attachment. If you're outside business hours, unfortunately, the call goes to Courtney, and you may be put on hold for quite a while. So I would suggest, just during business hours, and someone will get in touch with you right away and follow up with the complainant.
Ms. Wood, for the notification of residents?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair. So we've been trying to definitely engage with residents and businesses. We've been tracking all the, letters and such that are going to mayor and council. When the service first opened, letters were sent out to 200 meters around the service with contact information. We've met with Nanaimo and Area Public Safety Association, the Nob Hill Neighborhood Association, the South End Community Association. We've done a visit to the businesses in the area. We've done some home visits with some of the residents. So we've been open to that neighborhood engagement. If there's other ideas that, the committee would like to advise staff on how to engage more, we're open to do that. I've done several phone calls. I've held private meetings. My office door is open to collect any of that information. And again, I think that sometimes there's an expectation that I can make any changes, but this information just goes to council, and so all of that information is provided to council.
Chief Doyle, you wanted to add something?
Just because we're on the topic of, when you talked about process, your chair, is that, I guess I don't want to speak for all first responders, but for fire, but I think I can speak for all first responders. If there's an emergency, call 911 at any point. It's a complex system. It goes to Vancouver first, or ECOM, and when they ask fire, police, ambulance, they only dispatch to one service provider. So that's why sometimes you'll get a varied response. So if you ask for fire, and we've been asked this, we've had this question at this meeting before, and there's some type of criminality that they have a decision to make, they'll send it perhaps to fire, and then the fire dispatcher, depending on what center that's being dispatched out of, has a decision to make whether they include something to do with criminality or ambulance, and that is the case if it's a medical call. They'll go to BCAS, and then BCS has the opportunity to send their resources and attach other resources. Likewise, if it's a police matter, it'll go, in our case, to Comox, and they have the opportunity to attach resources. So that's why sometimes you'll get a varied response to an emergency. Some people would expect that in some cases maybe it's police and fire. That doesn't always happen, and that's why sometimes police has to call fire, sometimes fire has to call police, and likewise with BCS. So it's a complex system. But I just wanted to make that clear if we're having the discussion about calling emergency service. Anytime there's an emergency, call 911, and they will dispatch the primary service provider, and perhaps, depending on the call matrix, attach other resources. So,
follow up, Hillary?
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think it's important for me to bring these neighborhood concerns forward, and it helps us all better understand the chain of how to effectively communicate the message. When you talked about the new CCTV cameras that are being installed, is there going to be like accompanying signage that will alert people that they should just go one block further away? And like how do we plan for that?
Through the chair, I'm not sure what your question is. There is signage that people will be on video, that they're going to be filmed. There is signage related to that, as far as I understand, not a signage that they need to move a block away.
No, I just mean like that's the impact of like putting up cameras and then having signage. Like, would it not? Is it a privacy thing where you have to put up signage that you are on camera? And I'm seeing yes from the legal professionals. So it is good, but recognizing that it will just make people go a little bit further away, and then you just keep pushing it, so.
Okay, any other people wanting to speak to this? Ruth?
Yeah, I had one question around the breaks to service. So are the people that are on the sidewalk there, are they hub users or are they people that are simply
Good question. Followers.
just congregating? Because I have noticed sometimes someone will be wearing a really bright coat or something and I go to work, they're there, I drive home, they're there. You know, it does appear that they're hanging out all day. So, and further, just a caveat to that is that this breaks of service, I'm really glad to hear that the people that are running the hub and the shelter are going to have high standards of behavior for them to be, you know, respected and be safe. However, if those people that are breaking those rules and are disrespectful or violent or, you know, otherwise unable to be in this lowest of low barrier setting, if they're just simply put out into my community, then I don't see how that helps the community and how that I think you could say that is directly impacting the community and that would be directly from the hub. So do we know who these people are just
Ms. Wood?
hanging out or what?
So through the chair, so from my understanding from the service providers is that folks are given a break in service when it is due to safety issues, like you've mentioned, but also if they're doing inappropriate behavior on the sidewalk outside of the hub. So there's various different things. If it's related to a safety issue or criminal nature, they're calling RCMP. So, or they're calling the CSOs. So if they're getting removed from there, they're getting support from RCMP and CSO. So from where they go after that service, their interaction with RCMP or CSO at that time, that could be in other parts of the neighborhood. So there's that follow-up through there as well. And so I think that they work really hard not to do the break-in service so folks can come inside. I think depending on what's happening on the sidewalk, I think is timing, could be related to timing. I mentioned between 8 to 9, there is no service. So people are often leaving the shelter and they're waiting for the daytime service to open. So there's some of that. Between 5 to 8 is when we typically get the most congregation at that time. It's because the overnight shelter opens at 5. But people are waiting around there to see if there's a bed available for them. So my understanding is that people have to check in at 8 o'clock to confirm their bed. So people are out there waiting to see who's going to confirm their bed and see if there's going to be any available beds. And then after 8 o'clock is when you shouldn't see a large congregation out at that time. Folks who are staying at the shelter are able to go and come back, but they're not supposed to be congregating outside. So if that's happening, I would suggest calling the service provider because that is something that they're working on to make sure that congregation's not happening.
Follow up?
Follow up. I reject that it's my job to call the service provider when this service provider was injected into my community and is getting hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to run this. They need to run it well and they need to keep the sidewalks clean and clear and abide by the bylaws of any other business. I don't understand why this is up for debate, and I quite frankly do not accept that it's my responsibility to have a part-time job calling and engaging in relationship building with people when this is something that the city, and I regret it's needed, put into 55 Victoria. Through the chair, I'll pass that feedback on to the service provider. It's been our understanding that we have asked, because I have heard from other residents in the community about some of the congregation that happens at night and just trying to understand, because we don't have CSOs overnight, you know, all of that stuff. So it's hard for us to know what's happening without that report coming to us. So I hear you, and I'll bring that to the service provider to ensure that they're doing that work throughout the night as well. And I know that, you know, I think it's, and I can bring this will be part of that report, but the actual service as well, they don't make people stay in their bed from like 8 till 10 p.m. at night. So there's some movement there, right? And I think that may be contributing to the issue that you're mentioning.
Follow up?
I had a question about the Good Neighbor Agreement and if it's possible for us to get some idea of what the Good Neighbor Agreement is for these service providers for this neighborhood, and if they are actually being held accountable to that standard and what that standard is.
Through the chair, so I think you and I had email correspondence about this. And I sent you so basically the way that the service is being funded right now is that the city has a contract with United Way. Because it's a federally funded program, it was a requirement for that federally funded program couldn't come to the city for contract management. So we've given the money to United Way through the CAB and Reaching Home. And the scope of services that I shared with you stipulates in there that that United Way needs to have good neighbor commitments with the service provider. And in that email correspondence, that's when Miss Naomi Woodland reached out to you to have that conversation about the good neighbor commitments.
Okay, I'm going to look through my email and see what their commitments are, because my recollection is that those commitments were quite vague. It was like mitigate the impacts. It wasn't very specific. So that's what I'm looking for now that we have everybody here for transparency. Everyone who should be here has a seat at the table. Can we look at what the Good Neighbor Agreement is? Because I think it's fair to say that I wouldn't call 55 Victoria Road a good neighbor right now. So that's what I'm looking for.
Right, and so we can work with United Way to provide that. They hold that service agreement.
Any, Doug?
I just want to say that it's one thing to have a job and be given a problem that's relatively straightforward and be given the resources and the information to solve that problem. And it's quite a different thing to have a job and be given a problem that no one has figured out how to solve and not given all the tools to do it and not given all the money to do it. And so that's got to be terribly frustrating for everybody involved in that. And I really appreciate what they do. And the other, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? So this is what I've heard. We want to look at the parking lot to see if that can be utilized in a better way to support. We want to see diversification throughout the city of services, like, why are they all located in one area? We want to look at the good neighborhood agreements. Do they reflect actual proper good neighborhood agreements, or are they too vague so that they're not done? We want to see something happen with the sidewalk so that everybody is safe, including those that are vulnerable, as well as other drivers. And that's where I think the, whatchamacallit comes in, the parkade is a possibility solution to that. We've talked about the 911 process and when to call 911 versus when not to, and we've talked about the process if there's concerns about police behaviors, to please contact their supervisor, or if you're not comfortable doing that, if you're comfortable with one of your counselors, please feel free to reach out to one of us and we will certainly follow up through the proper channels. We talked about that not only is there trauma to the people on the streets, it's trauma to the residents who are seeing this on a daily basis and whose children are being impacted by it. So again, it comes down to, like, I personally think it's solvable. It just takes government's will to give the money to do it properly and build the proper facilities. It's just not happening right now. Anyhow, anything further? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Woods. Appreciate the update. Now we've got, the next update is Nanaimo Youth Resiliency Strategy, Building Safer Community Funds, and that's Ms. Wood again.
Great.
20 minutes.
Thank you, through the chair. This one probably be quicker, but probably. So I just wanted to give the Public Safety Committee an update on the Building Safer Communities Fund with the focus on the Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy. With 1 year funding remaining, we're also seeking input from community members on how we might sustain these important programs moving forward. So just a note, we do have our recreation manager from the city of Nanaimo here also in the room, Mr. Damon Johnston, who works in partnership with me on this project as well. So if there's questions related, we're both here to answer questions as well. So just as a reminder and to begin with some context, the committee might recall that the city of Nanaimo was allocated $1.8 million from the Public Safety Canada through Building Safer Communities Fund to develop and implement a gun and gang violence prevention strategy between October 24th, 2022 and March 31st, 2026. Council endorsed the Nanaimo Youth Resilience Strategy in May 2023, and the strategy outlines 6 key focus areas that are designed to reduce risk factors and strengthen protective factors for vulnerable youth who might engage in gun and gang violence. So the 6 focus areas are the creating safe youth gathering spaces, so free welcoming spaces for youth at existing facilities. Youth outreach, really looking at expanding youth outreach to connect to basic needs, services, and connection. Sinewith teachings, these are cultural grounded opportunities for youth to connect with nature, land, and water. Building on youth mentoring, so linking youth with diverse role models and caring adults. Enhancing the existing programs that we already have and working to fill any service gaps or strengthening supports in those existing programs. And another key focus area was media and communication and just kind of more promoting positive stories and challenging stigma that surround youth. So these focus areas are connected to evidence-based outcomes, and they did meet the required criteria for public safety under this fund. In July 2023, the city launched a community grant application process to bring the strategy to life. And on September 25th, Council approved $1.61 million of Building Safer Communities Fund to be distributed among the 8 community partners. And these partners are delivering programming tied directly to the strategy's 6 focus areas. So just quickly, the funded agencies and initiatives include Big Brothers Big Sisters. They're doing mindful mentoring. It's a program that integrates yoga, mindful meditation, and cognitive therapeutic techniques for youth. BGC Central Vancouver Island is providing drop-in youth spaces at 5th Street and in partnership with the city at the Nanaimo Aquatic Center, providing registration-based options. They also do navigation services, case management, and activities for some of our most vulnerable youth in the city. Central Vancouver Island Multicultural Society is hosting empowering workshops to build connection and coping strategies for newcomer youth using peer mentors in the city. And City of Nanaimo Park Recreation and Culture Department, they're delivering a recreation prescription program for at-youth risk to engage in recreation and social connections. And they're partnering with mentors from BIU. We're really excited about that program. And the Parks Recreation and Culture Department also provides the Youth Lounge in partnership with BGC and safe spaces at the Youth Lounge, and they've expanded that service as well. Nanaimo Food Share is providing a program called Food for Youth, and it's a program that provides food security, cooking, and growing educational opportunities. Nanaimo Hornets, you might have seen on the CBC News just recently, does Rugby Works, and it's a program that provides mentorship through sport and volunteerism amongst youth. School District 68 is doing drop-in youth spaces at Woodland Secondary, Pleasant Valley Elementary, and Georgia Avenue Community School with opportunities to connect with local Indigenous teachings, art, recreation, music, and caring adult mentors. And Snuneymuxw First Nations is doing a drop-in space at the Snuneymuxw Gym for on and off reserve youth with providing socio-emotional learning opportunities, life skills, and they have traditional teachings that they do as well. Each initiative directly supports youth safety, inclusion, and resilience. And I should note that a big part of this work has also been a steering committee that's been kind of struck up with many different partners that represent many different sectors within the city. And they're charged with overseeing the strategy development and the funding distribution. They meet monthly with funded partners to monitor the progress, encourage collaboration, which has been pretty amazing, and ensure alignment with the community needs as well. So since programming began in October 2023, over 2,000 unique youth have participated in the funded activities, and agencies report positive changes in youth. Many of these things we're super excited about. We'll be bringing an update to council on. We're seeing stronger emotional resilience and identity, better social connections, and we're seeing fewer RCMP calls, particularly in the schools, reduced screen time and healthier choices. Youth are receiving basic needs. Nanaimo Food Share provided over 3,700 meals to youth and their families during this time as well. So we're really encouraged by these early results. And if you're interested, we'll be doing an update to council, but instead of having staff do the update, we are actually bringing youth who will be sharing some of their impacts in this program. So we're really committed to supporting this work as well. But with 1 year funding left, we're trying to figure out how to continue on some of this good work. Some of the pieces that we're already working on with community partners on how to sustain the programs. Some of the agencies are redirecting existing internal budgets. For example, the school district, as well as Snuneymuxw, are looking at shifting other program funding to continue funding the programs that are showing really good evidence. seeking additional grant funding through other external opportunities. They're continuing to collaborate and they resource share. So they've been sharing space, they've been sharing food. So the partnerships have been very strong. And the other thing is the steering committee has supported an application with Qualyp Lalem and Snuneymuxw First Nations to ensure that the vision of the strategy is going to be aligned with the new youth foundry that is coming to Nanaimo. And where that youth foundry will be supporting youth with mental health and substance use and health support. So we're super excited about that, and that's hoping to come online next year at the end of March 2026. So any additional suggestions we'd welcome from the committee or even the broader community on how we might be able to sustain some of these programs.
Any questions for Ms. Wood? Seeing none, thank you very much, Ms. Wood. Appreciate that. All right, no new business. Oh, Kevin?
Is there room for other matters? I don't want to keep everybody, but I just wanted to, it's a little tangential, but I thought I'd
Go ahead.
bring some up if we have
We
time.
got 15 minutes.
I'll take way less than that because I'm hungry. Something I want to bring up, it's a bit of a niche thing, but I'm kind of looking to maybe some of the people over there, and I just wanted to, it's not something that would be in people's minds. And I particularly, it comes to mind driving through Boxwood and Northfield and all the crazy going on there right now, is the development of some of these roads, and you see it all over the place, and I sort of draw on my professional experience from this. I'm wondering if there's any sense of, from a public safety perspective, about the actual movement of emergency vehicles when engineering discussions are being made, because I gotta tell you, the changes that have just happened are gonna screw with every ambulance that has to get to Nanaimo Hospital, because they all come down Northfield, and when the traffic gets backed up and they build a concrete median, you just stop and wait.
Well,
Because we don't want to push people in through
I
red
bring
lights
this
and
up
everything.
every
But
single
it is,
time as Aaron's laughing.
it's a large source
It's
of
a huge
frustration
issue,
for
yeah.
emergency services, I think,
So-
so.
I would suggest that you get, well, you're a supervisor, that emails start coming into mayor and council.
Yeah, I just don't know what the best way to do that. I think, there's a number of, smart people here and they might have had similar
Just had this
experiences.
conversation
but,
with some firemen and some police officers who are very concerned about the 3rd Street, complete street.
Yeah, and it happens all the time. There's no
Yeah.
out. There's just
Well,
nowhere to go.
I've been asking for years for you guys to be at the table.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we as a council will have to look at. So, but I think the best way is to get your managers to start writing your concerns and.
Yeah,
Because
it's-
I know, people die because our streets are too narrow. You can't get through. You gotta wait 5, 10, 20 seconds, and we all know in a heart attack. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just us, but I mean,
No, I
like,
know,
everybody
but
that's.
the
working
ambulance
around.
is the
It's like it's
critical one.
It is
No
a public
offense to the
safety
fire.
thing, even though it's a little bit, maybe specific, to.
No,
to
it's a very valid point. Like, that's one of the problems with the narrowing of the streets. But like fire trucks, they don't have to worry as much because they're big, right? People will move for them, but ambulance and police cars, you don't move as fast. So, very valid point. Maybe that's maybe a topic for a public safety committee meeting, Ms. Brock? The car, I should say, Brock, to look at the narrowing of the streets and the impact on emergency vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll record it and see if this is something that staff are able to come back with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Valid point. I'm so glad to hear somebody else say that. I'm always. Okay, seeing no other further things, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Kevin, seconded by Doug. All those in favor? Thank you all very much, and I hope you got a chance to do the survey, and I think those results will be coming out for next.